The Ward Scott Files is produced by Ward Scott Files, LLC.
Come on, everybody! Come on, everybody!
This is a Ward Scott Files advisory. The Ward Scott Files radio show may contain material not suited for people who are easily offended. Trust us on this. This show contains adult information and opinions. Please protect small children, sensitive pets, fragile houseplants, and liberal relatives. Thank you.
Hold on. Good morning. Good morning. I'm on there now, Jay. All right, Jay had his finger on the button. I couldn't hear myself think, and that's not a bad thing. Good morning. Good morning. Here from the Warthog Man Cave here with Coach Hogg. I'm going to be Coach Hogg here for a minute because opening up and we'll talk about the demise of the AAF, which is a sad story because I got a good friend in there who was doing really well. And then we will switch over here to Professor Hogg and we'll get on to the news. But it was, I don't know, everybody was suspicious from the very beginning of whether a new league could actually make it. That was always the talk, and we have some reasons to have that kind of discussion. We had the USFL, and then we had the WFL. And the USFL actually did okay, and Steve did well with the Tampa Bay Bandits, and it's kind of where he developed his, I'm talking about Coach Spurrier now, it's kind of where he developed his fun and gun offense, and then it became the style he put in here in the SEC with the Gators, and the rest was history. But the WFL was underfinanced and over bloated and all that sort of business. But a lot of guys got sucked in on that, and this is all my memory working now about these leagues. And so now along comes the Alliance of American Football. Had a lot of hype. Yours truly was down here for the opening of it locally with Steve there, and we were going to have a lot of fun, and for me personally, it was a lot of fun to watch the Alliance of American Football because I got to watch Steve's mind at work again and offensive play calling and moving the team, which is his forte. So it was a sad deal, mostly I think for these players because they were out there really playing their the best and trying to get to the next level and get noticed and all that. And I think there were a couple on the Apollos that were doing pretty well, and that was a quarterback, and then Will Hill, a defensive back, and then there was a linebacker. There were three players on that team that I thought showed out pretty well. There might have been an offensive lineman in there, but I thought the quarterback and Will Hill, the defensive back, a cornerback, and then that linebacker, number 52, I thought they were pretty good. And then the other teams, had, Manziel came along, and he's flunked out everywhere he went. The first thing he does is get kicked in the head and taken out of the game the other day. But be that as it may, we had heard, I'd heard this about 10 days ago, that this, was going to happen. And so I checked the sources. I kept it quiet. I didn't want to be a naysayer and a bearer of bad news. And in particular, it hadn't happened yet. So I kept it quiet. And then some people checked it out a little bit more thoroughly, whom I trust, and and they thought they were getting good information, and they got back with me and said, no, it's going to be all right. There's a little wrinkle here and there about cash and who owns what and who can say what, but that's going to work out all right. And of course, that turned out to be a false positive. Mike Bianchi had already called it down in Orlando last week as 10 toes up here, not in the too distant future, and he caught a little flack for that because he was evidently premature. It hadn't really happened, and now it has happened. So a lot of the ways in which it happened, it's not unlike the way in which when we were first on the radio back at in Star 99.5 over there running the talk of the town, we were right in the middle of a 2-hour show. And then after the first hour, the plug was pulled on the 2-hour show, and one of my friends later, because it changed ownership and the owners changed the whole format. This is a very fickle business we're in here, and people, for all sorts of reasons. But but anyway, one of my friends was listening to us on the radio during that show, and he took at noon he took a break to go into a convenience store to get, I don't know, a pack of gum or something, because that was our break between the 2-hour show. He came back out and they were playing Red Skelton. He thought he'd had a stroke. He couldn't believe it. He said, oh, wait a minute, didn't I just leave that station on the talk of the town and now come back and it's Red Skelton? What the heck went wrong? Did the planets flip-flop? And that's kind of what happened to these coaches and these players. They got right in the middle of their practice. They got told. The San Antonio Commanders, according to the Sports Illustrated article, were in the middle of a practice when a report came down from the Sports Business Journal that the league was. And this is like a kick in the stomach. I'm going to tell you something. When you're doing your best, when you really, and these bonding situations that go on among athletes are very, very permanent. You develop an intense kind of relationship, and here we've had about 6-7 games into the season. I can guarantee you, and all the other stuff, those guys have bonded pretty well. And then for them to get that, all of a sudden while they're out there in the middle of the practice field, the Memphis Express were breaking for lunch before their afternoon workout. And they found out the news when they returned to the facility. And then, of course, the San Diego Fleet had a practice just after 1 p.m. local time, and they had to scramble to get the players into a meeting to explain that the whole thing, they weren't going back out on the field to practice. So one of the things that affects these guys, according to the Sports Illustrated articles, they're wondering about health insurance. Evidently, they got health insurance, and whether they'd receive a final paycheck. And some of the coaches, and I know Steve, from what I understand, just sent their teams home. He just called them in and said, well, you guys, it's R&R, we had a good time. I can't do anything about it. I'm just a coach, and we had see you on down the road, and enjoyed it. And of course, and Steve is declaring, rightfully so, to be the league champion with a 7-1 record, and closest is a 5-3. And as I said at the top of this particular presentation here, was that I enjoyed one more opportunity to see Steve's mind at work in offensive play calling on a football field. And a winner wins, and that's always been Steve. And boy, it's very infectious, and it lights up your day a little bit to see that. Even though he's hobbling around and he's had several operations and he's banged up, he's still got his brain working, and he's got the love of the sport. So that's what it is, coaches. Some of the little things I thought the Sports Illustrated article was detailed that were interesting. Coach, it's been promised computers to check out the off season in order to watch film. They never got those computers, evidently. That was apparently a warning sign when you look back on it. If you're supposed to have a computer to check out your off-season films and you don't get them, why, what's that all about? They're obviously concerned about one of the problems that they had here in the state of Florida, and people don't understand this, and Keith Perry alluded to it, whom we'll have on the show Friday. The workman's comp bill is so high in the state of Florida that it's very difficult to give somebody a raise. It's easier to let that person go and get somebody in at a cheaper rate. And Keith explained that on the last show. If you want to go back to wardscottfiles.tv to archives, and Keith explained that. Well, that actually affected the Orlando Apollos, and Keith didn't know that. I mentioned it on the show. Orlando Apollos could not afford to practice in the state of Florida, even though they played in Orlando. They practiced in Georgia, where the workman comp tab was a lot cheaper. So I'm not completely up on how all that works, but I know that was one of the issues that sent the team up in the state of Georgia to practice, because that really became their home practice field, although they played, out of Orlando. And the owner of the Carolina Hurricanes, this guy named Tom Dundon, had pledged $250 million. And as in all business ventures, one of the real jeopardies that goes on is if you haven't got a business that's a cash cow to feed the business that's not doing well, why, you got a problem. If you just got that one business trying to make it on its own, you're subject to all sorts of the winds of fate. I mean, everything from hurricanes to droughts to everything can affect a business when you're very undercapitalized. The worst thing is to be undercapitalized. So, and these expenses are big. I don't care how you cut it. You've got to really have a deep pocket and have a constant. And they weren't getting it off ticket sales. The ticket sales were pretty pitiful. There's so many competing things in the spring which always concern me. You've got other sports, and big time you got the March Madness and that whole bit. But they did have television contracts, and they were doing pretty well with the television contracts apparently, and making pretty good money off of that. But that wasn't enough to take care of the investment in a positive way. Also, there were some things going on with the NFL Players Association as to whether or not they really wanted to tap into some of these guys coming out of this league. The NFL Players Association, as I understand it, got a little protective about their particular process for getting guys into the league. And So at any rate, that's all we got to say about the AAF, American Alliance of American Football. It started out right here with Steve being hired, the first coach. A lot of hoopla, a lot of fun, going down and then watching him, get through one of his infamous press conferences where it's just as funny as Saturday Night Live or Johnny Carson, because you don't know what he's going to say, but it's going to be the truth, and it's and he's going to let the chips fall where they may. That's always been what has made Steve so quotable and such a draw for the press. So regrettably, that's the situation, and we're going to have to move on. But I wanted to give, since I'd covered the whole AAF, and of course Steve's from here, that I wanted to get into that story a little bit with you. Now the other story that is very interesting here, and I want to talk about this, is this Easter wrap deal that got, it got pushed aside for very good reasons, and that its paperwork wasn't right. And as I said before, I've been through this as a city manager. I had this happen to me when I was a city manager in Archer. Very same type deal, the wrap thing coming in, and what was happening is, of course, they found a soft target, if you will, and it was Archer. And I'm going to tell you, they found Archer again in a minute. I'm going to let you know that, in a place called Mars Park, where they've moved this. And the issue with this has always been police protection or security. And when you have a rap concert, of course, I don't care what they say, you're attracting people who make a living out of foul-mouthed language and drugs and all that business and glorifying it. And you can just check back, you've just got a rapper who got killed out there in L.A. You've got guys shooting at each other out here in last hookah. Huh? How do I know about what?
How do you know about that one rapper getting shot?
How do I know? I just know, man. I just know. Stay up on the world, So the rapper got plugged out in front of a place he was going to rehabilitate. He was from the hood. He was going to come back and buy this shopping center, right in the neighborhood where he'd, been peddling dope and everything and having a tough time of it, and in a classical way, being raised by the grandma. It's always the second generation mother that raises him. The first mother hits the road and the father can't be found. That's the way he was raised. And of course, he tattooed himself up to get approval of a gang, so he ran with a rough crowd. That's the only brothers he's got. Those guys they play rough, and because their trade is outside the law and they're peddling drugs, and that's the way they make their money, and that was his gig. But he found a way to make poetry. This is the only redeeming quality I can tell you about the really good. I like Tupac Shakur, for example, who also died in a hail of gunfire. I actually thought there was some, to the good ones, they actually have some poetic qualities, and some of the stuff that's ugly out of their environment and out of the world and where they've been raised, they turn into something at least rhythmical. And that rhythmical thing is catching, infectious, and is primitive and all that business. So it gets people to jumping up and down out here in the dark. And of course, it's all glorified. Now, the language of it's terrible. It's bitches and hoes and the F-bombs and everything else. And then, of course, the glorification of the drugs. So I don't care what they say. One of the things that the concert promoters are saying is they got turned down because it was going to be a rap deal, and your prejudice race card was played. You're going to be a racist for turning this down, and that's bull hockey because you didn't have your paperwork. And I can tell you that one of the organizers, we're just checking into, we're not prepared to go public yet with the past of this particular organizer, but because the organizer spells the name two different ways, we want to make sure we got the right one. But you're going to find out, even in the last one, the hookah lounge thing, you've got convicted felons out there packing heat, shooting each other. Here you've got convicted felons selling alcohol. And I'm kind of proud, really, of Michelle Lieberman, the county manager, for putting her foot down. It has to originate with her. It should originate with her. It should originate with the manager, who at least advises the county commission that, listen, you're going out on a limb here, and I don't recommend this. I mean, that's what I did with the county, with the city commission in Archer. I said, and one of the things I did prep for it was I made them indemnify the city, come up with an insurance policy, pay for this, that, one, and another, and any security that we had to bring down there, and we had to pay overtime for the ASO, while the rap concert promoters had to pay it. I made that a deal that they didn't get in there. And boy, of course, as I said, they pulled a race card on me right away and said I was a cheap shot artist and this, and that, one, and another. Nobody ever done that to them, and I must have hated the blacks and all that. And it really didn't have anything to do with it. I mean, it just had to do, you play by the rules, but a lot of people don't think the rules apply to them. And they've been busting them all their lives with impunity. And then they get this court system, which is, elected and connected, which we've covered, and is afraid of being, too hard on the blacks because after all, the whites wrote the laws and this and that. And, you heard that sing-song stuff forever. And so they play that card. But thankfully, the county and the Minister of Propaganda, Mark Sexton, announced it rather nicely that they didn't have their paperwork in time, and they didn't. There's a lot of things you got to do, a lot of I's you got to dot and T's you got to cross. And I tell you what, they've been giving that doggone fairgrounds away a long time now to Rodney Long, and I've been on that case with the county commission for some time. That guy's been able to go out there and have this food drive for the homeless and the hungry, and they donate it, they give it to him. They don't charge him for it. And he worked some deal about that, and I called the county commission's attention to that and said, "What are you doing? Why are you letting that dude in there? It's no professional courtesy, that you can't do that. You got to treat him like the others." And curiously enough, one of the guys on my side in that was Mike Byerly. And I talked to Mike Byerly on the phone. I said, "Mike," and Mike said, "Ward, I agree with you on this, and I don't like it." So there's some things, you agree with somebody on it, you're actually opposite in the continuum with on everything else. At least Mike's got the courage to go ahead and say what he believes, and he said it to me. He said, "Ward, I'm right with you. We shouldn't be giving any special treatment to Rodney Long." So I applaud, the county government for not giving any special treatment, not buying into all this hokum pokum about, the same thing came up with one of the promoters as Rodney Long's kid, and he claimed he was going to run for mayor, and that he was already registered and had his paperwork in. Of course, he didn't have his paperwork in, and then he went ahead and called himself the mayor of East Gainesville anyway. That was all kind of funny, but he thought he was, and according to his testimony anyway, he didn't know why he wasn't on the ballot because he turned his paperwork. No, come to find out, he had not turned his paperwork in. So one of the guys promoting this we're checking into is Laquan Murphy. And the rappers, you can go do your own research on them. This is a whole, I don't really know much about them anymore, and I started to ask Jay before we went on the show if he knew anything about them. We could probably pull up their language and see what the language is and all that, but
you discredit me.
Did I discredit you? Did you know them?
No.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, good. That speaks well of you, son.
Yes, don't expect that I know these hoodlums.
So, and this is all J-Long Productions is one of them, about 4 producers on this thing, and we've got all that research for you. We know who the producers are. And we're going to give you probably a later date a little bit now. But here's the thing. They found a relocation, and the relocation is in Archer in a place called Mars Park, M-A-R-Z, and it's really funky about this because I imagined when I heard it had been 86th out of the county, where would the soft target be that you could maybe go ply your trade? And my first suspicion would be it would be Archer. Archer government's in disarray, doesn't have much leadership. And if it is truly in the city of Archer, and I think it is, it's got an Archer address, and it's out on 170th, not too far from, so anyway, I have to check into that a little bit more after the show, but it's got an Archer mailing address, and that's the only way I think it could work. I mean, it couldn't work if the county nixed it in the county. It can't take place anywhere in a county because it'd be subject to the same county officials. So, now, though, they of course claimed they had all the documentation, and the Minister of Propaganda refuted that, and I don't think they ever had that at all. And they wanted to sell alcohol. They didn't have. We've covered that. Didn't have a license. And the big thing is security. Now you got a lot of stuff going on that weekend, and you got limited security, and somebody's got to pay these guys. And we see what happens in Hookah Lounge. You didn't have any security for that, and you got Gigi Simmons, who's got a questionable background, checkered past, we like to say, and she goes to Tony Jones, and somehow, some way, and she had no business doing that. She has no authority to do that, and somehow he buckles, and he goes out there with about 4 or 5 guys and tries to police the joint, and he's so ineffective that they end up shooting right there under his nose, plugging each other. And if you've ever been out to the Hookah Lounge, I started to go by and take some pictures. I mean, it's appalling. I mean, it's just amazing. And but you don't need much. I mean, that's the way it works. So we'll keep an eye on that for you. It is what it is. But it's proud of the county for getting a hold of this and asking some good questions that anybody ever in the right mind would have asked, and making them hold to it, and not let them play the race card on you and beat you up with that gobbledygook. I want to go over to Laura Lightfoot. She covering the Chicago's race, and She's the first black and first lesbian mayor, first black and lesbian mayor. And so there you are. And the other thing that's interesting about it, and I've had people, there's a young guy running for the mayor of Alachua, for example, and somebody said, oh, well, he's never had public office before. I mean, so what? Laura Lightfoot's never had public office before. You think Trump had public office before? I mean, that's the whole idea. I mean, some guys get into public office and abuse it and use it and all this kind of, a good example is Uncle Joe, whom we're going to get into. Uncle Joe has just abused the living tar out of being a politician. What a nutcase. So Laura Lightfoot, and this is defeated this woman, Toni Prickwinkle. She was the current president of the Cook County Board. And Lightfoot won nearly 75% of the vote. So the people obviously didn't want an insider. They wanted an outsider, and the election therefore was historic. But there's only a 35% turnout. To me, Chicago reminds me a lot of Gainesville. It's filled with corruption. Gainesville's filled with corruption. Chicago's filled with corruption. It's got a real issue with the minorities that don't seem to have a place at the table, and nobody does anything much more about it than pay lip service to it. I guess the only thing it doesn't have yet is the rate of murders that Chicago has, although it's it's building. The violence with weapons is building, and the gangs are here. You just don't hear about it in Gainesville, except every once in a while there'll be a tip of the iceberg, and you'll get a little story about it. So there was only 35% of the people turned out in Chicago, and I don't know what we had in this last election. I think it was 12, 13%. That's pitiful. But that allows somebody like Poe to crow. How do you like that? Poe to crow. That he's got the endorsement of the people. Well, he's only got the endorsement of the percentage that turned out, and the rest of them, I guess, have checked out. They gave up, or South Maine's a good example. I mean, who wouldn't believe? Why does it surprise you it's 6 months overdue? Do you ever know government to do anything on time and right? I mean, come on, it's ruining business down there. It doesn't care about that. It doesn't matter. They don't have anything in any skin in the game, as they say. So I guess Lightfoot's, and this is interesting, Lightfoot's credentials are she was a former federal prosecutor, and she won all the city's 50 awards. And this whole thing, about Smollett factored into this, and no doubt played into her hands, because if she'd been at the helm, would she have done what this Fox woman did? And so she's never held office before, and so we'll see how she does. I mean, she can't do much worse than whoever else has been in charge. I don't know that Manuel got a stinking thing done. We were watching that, and we've been covering it, so I wanted to follow up on it. So we'll see how she does. She's probably a cleaner candidate than some of the other candidates they've had, in spite of her being quote-unquote a lesbian. Her background seems to be pretty clean compared to what some of the corruption can be there. Of course, the race was chaotically influenced by the Jussie Smollett case and an ongoing debate over the relations between the cops and the black community. And we'll see how she handles that. The police force has a historically low morale, according to Chicago Tribune. Low morale. Does that sound like Gainesville? Massive job losses. Does that sound like Gainesville? A threat of even higher punitive taxes. Does that sound like Gainesville? And a dwindling population. I don't know about the dwindling population here, but it is certainly all the other above. Yeah, there is an exit from these big cities. Unfortunately, they're coming to Florida. Chicago, by the way, according to the summary on this article, has lost more citizens to out-migration rather than immigration. I think that's kind of interesting, Jay. There's the immigration is to come in, and the out-migration, which you don't hear much, is to go out. And it has more than any other big American city. Now, they've been flying out of Chicago in droves for the last 4 years, and Chicago has been leading the pack in the exodus and the people getting the heck out of town. So the other thing I wanted to cover is, of course, we're going to spend a little time again, because it's an interesting phenomenon what's going on with Uncle Joe, and what's going on with a couple other things, and that is the thing with the pursuit of Hillary the liar. because one of the things that's going to happen, and I'll talk about that in a Wall Street Journal article here in a little bit more in a minute, is you're going to have this sideshow, is what it's called in the article I'm going to allude to in a moment, where, Bug Eyes and that crowd goes over there and tries to subpoena 81 people and go over the same plowed ground that we just paid Mueller to go over for 2 years. That ain't going to be the real show. The real show is going to be run by Lindsey Graham. And Lindsey Graham is going to go find out how far the road goes up to, of course, Obama and Hillary. So I think what this is a preparation by the left to defuse that and ridicule it, and right now it's being led by none other than Christiane Amanpour. Do you remember this woman? She used to be on CNN, and she had all these comments, and probably she's Muslim. I don't know. I have to look that up. I'm pretty sure she is. But she said on CNN's one of CNN's shows, and let's see which one it was. She was I don't know which one it was. I'll get it in a minute. She said on one of the CNN shows that Comey should treat the phrase "lock her up" as hate speech. Now, of course it isn't. And even the blonde Bembette, Megyn Kelly, has come out in a tweet, which I read about an hour ago, saying there ain't no such thing as hate speech when you say lock her up. I mean, how do you get a stretch out of that lock her up is hate speech? I mean, this is the problem. People can't define the words they use. So, but nevertheless, that doesn't keep Amanpour from doing what we call damage control. She says that she's talking to Comey about this, and Comey, of course, we're going to talk about him and what his role is in all this. But they're trying to set up a situation where they take some of the pressure off of what Graham is certainly going to do. So Amanpour, she was a CNN chief international anchor, and she asked Fire Director James Comey in interviews broadcast Tuesday about this. And of course, Comey is. I call him Frankenstein. He looks just like, I don't know if you ever saw whenever they created Frankenstein and they jolt him with a piece of electricity out of the sky and get him going, and then he comes up with all the stitches and everything. And later on, I always enjoyed, as a kid, I enjoyed watching them do Bride and Frankenstein. They did that with her, and they jolted her with the juice. Her hair stood up on end. So again, it was pretty clever by the producers of that whole thing of Frankenstein, that after a while, Frankenstein would need a mate, right? And so they created Bride of Frankenstein. Now, there's a lot of ways in which the left is going to try to deflate, if you will, the efforts of the right as we get ready to try to go after, find out how far up the food chain all this stuff went. And I call him sleazy Cummings. I just can't stand Cummings. Don't put a picture of him up there, Jay. I can't stand the guy. He's outlived his time. But we got the Ghoul report and all that, and Trump, of course, says, look, it's over, this, that, one, and another. But the Oversight Committee voted Tuesday, get this, to go after the administration's security clearance process. Now, it's just one more waste of time. As I said the other day, the president has the ability to give a security clearance to whomever he wants to for whatever reason. I mean, he's the president. He wants you there in the office with you. He's not going to let some bureaucrat put in office by Obama on down the food chain decide whether or not you can sit there. You can see the political interference of that. So this committee voted 22-15 along party lines to authorize, of course it's going to be this way all the time, to authorize a subpoena for former White House Personnel Security Director Carl Klein. And they're going to try to find out security clearances granted to several White House officials. What are they going to try to find out? I mean, what do they think is going to happen? I mean, what are they going to get to? Can you imagine this? I'm trying to follow. What are you going to find out? I mean, I don't get it. I don't get it. And by the way, these guys sitting on these committees, they're such leakers, they're such leakers, these guys, Cummings and these people, that they don't get all, and I learned this from Ramsey Samurai, they don't get the full documentation that the top clearance gets because they don't trust them. They don't trust them. They'll leak it to the press. They won't give Bug Eyes any of this stuff in its rawest form because they don't trust them. They'll politicize it. And of course, Fat Jerry, they just don't trust him. So that's one of the things they're doing. And the other thing they're doing is they're going to try to challenge this thing I call Cummings, sleazy Cummings. I mean, I don't know what else to call him. He just is. I mean, he doesn't. The rules don't matter, except he claims that they do matter. The other thing that is bothering people is that the Republicans want this question about citizenship on the census, and boy, that's another thing they're going to go after. And that's an angry guy, isn't it, right there? Look at that dude. I wouldn't want to look at that. If I had, I don't know what I'd do. Maybe, that's not pretty. But anyway, they want to subpoena now all this citizenship stuff and get to the bottom of why and how why you want to ask about citizenship on a census form. Why can't you, why do you have to ask that question? Well, it's obvious why you have to ask that question, right? We want to know who's here legitimately because this is the way you dole out the goodies. I mean, particularly in the rural community, because I know quite a bit about the rural community and how underrepresented it is on the census forms, for the simple fact that you can't get and locate them and find them and get them all counted necessarily. So you have to really go looking for a lot of people in the rural communities because often they're down a road, and you just don't get there. And a lot of them don't have some of the modern things like you'd be surprised. They don't have the internet. They don't have some of the other stuff that you take for granted in the urban center. I mean, after all, the city of Gainesville is getting ready to run all this stuff around and broadband this and that, one thing and another, and you don't get that out in the country. So, Jay's throwing this up there. Is this person a citizen of the United States? Well, old grumpy Cummings, he wants to get after that. That's not, you can't be asking that question. So they want to subpoena those people and ask them where they're getting that from. And the other thing they want to do is this is really they want to haul in, and Jay put this at the beginning of our show today, they want to haul in Fox News, and Fox drives them crazy. It really drives them crazy. So Democrats in the United States House of Representatives, just Democrats, are demanding to know why Fox News did not publish a story prior to the 2016 election about an alleged affair years before between porn star Steamy Daniels and the Trumpster. We're still on Steamy. And so, this is my point. These guys are not going to let anything go that they think can cause confusion and go back over the ground and plow it up again. So they want to beat on the census question. They want to beat on the hate speech. They want to beat on, why didn't you do this 15 years ago? And I'm going to get into the double standard in that in a minute. So the House Committee on Oversight and Reform, and that's old Elijah Cummings, he wrote to the former Fox News reporter Diana Falzone last month demanding that she turn over any documents relating to Trump's alleged extramarital affairs. Now, this is what gets me. Alleged. So let me get this straight. You want to get documents that belong to the press, and believe me, I don't talk publicly on the show about a lot of things that I know because I don't really have proper documentation, and it's for all kinds of reasons, and so they didn't have any interest in Steamy back then, and they didn't have reliable documentation about it, and the guy wasn't even really running for the president yet. So what they're trying to do is armchair quarterback and saying, well, if you had brought this out, get what old grumpy Cummings, sleazy Cummings is trying to do. If you'd have brought this out before the election, Trumpster probably wouldn't have made it through the round of 18 or however many it was there with low energy Jeb and all that crowd, and you could have stopped his rise to power right then and there. if you just done this instead of that, if you just zigged instead of zagged. So really, we're going back, this is 24 years at least, and maybe 5. And so there ain't nothing that Sleazy Cummings won't go after. So he wrote after this Diana file zone. He wants, and it's an alleged, it's not even, why are you going to get into, it's not even public record. It's nobody's business if it's alleged. Are you telling me that, you know, you're going to take into account alleged stuff on Trump? I mean, how about Kavanaugh? I mean, you're going to try to, what are you talking about? You're going to draw alleged. There is a process for determining the veracity of things, okay? So an article in the New Yorker last month, and it's a Trump hater, alleged that Fox News, they're going to use all these outlets. They've been using them forever. Alleged that Fox News executive Ken LaCorte spiked the story to protect Trump. And, of course, LaCorte has vehemently denied it, saying the story lacked corroborating evidence and that the network was merely practicing responsible journalism. And, you know, this is the thing about the Democrats. When they want responsible journalism for their political goal, then they want responsible journalism. When they want irresponsible journalism for their political goal, then they want irresponsible journalism. And they want to be able to do it like a yo-yo. I mean, when they want it, instantly, and when they don't want it, instantly. What, Jay? What are you laughing about? Huh?
I'm just thinking of the Willy Wonka song, I Want It Now.
Oh, yeah, I want it now. I don't know them, but that sounds like they. So the article, you know, we got old Sleazy Cummings penning off another letter, and of course his staff did it. I doubt he did it. And she said she's going to cooperate with the committee, but in spite of the agreement that she has with Fox, that prevents her from speaking about the story. So see, nothing really matters to Sleazy Cummings. I mean, here the woman has an agreement with her employer, and it's a professional outfit. And meanwhile, did they ask the same thing of the FISA documents? Did they ask the same things of that crowd when they put out the phony documents of, no, they're not going after that. You think Sleazy Cummings is going to ask about that? That's going to have to be asked by the Senate and Lindsey Graham. The Sleazy Cummings is not going to ask that. So why is Sleazy Cummings asking this? This is what you have to say. You have to understand that Sleazy Cummings is fully aware that Lindsey Graham is going to be running the actual thing that the public's interested in. Lindsey Cummings is going to, Lindsey Cummings, so that'll never work. Sleazy Cummings is fully aware that the big show is across the street there, and they're going after Obama and Hillary. So he's got to divert the attention. He's got to have an equal kind of attraction. It's like there's 2 circuses in town. So he's going to have it. Let's go back and talk about Steamy. And let's talk about those things. You got it? This is how it works. Mama didn't raise no fool. I know what I'm talking about, okay? Steamy, well, it's Sleazy Cummings and Steamy Daniels, huh? And it's Bug Eye Shift and Fat Jerry. But, you know, come on, we can make, you got it? Fat Jerry. So, the investigation is being launched on what is quoted by the writer of this article, Joel Pollack, that it's a ridiculous notion that this story can be construed as something that influenced a campaign well before the Trumpster was even really out on the road there. And, you know, so that's not the reason. That's not why they're doing it. They're doing it to distract from Lindsey Graham. There you go. Huh? Are you with me? Well. I think it's so funny. I think this is better than, I so miss Johnny Carson, all right? And the great Carsonini and Ed McMahon. But Uncle Joe is filling our time right now with comedy. And I got to tell you that I have learned a new term, all right? Just when I thought I knowed it all, right, Jay? Jay thinks Jay, he's paid to think I know it all.
Ward knows all.
Oh, I know all, yeah. Oh, golly, let me find it here. It is just...
Resistance is futile.
Yeah, let me find it, because I fell over backwards whenever I saw the term. And it's been used by this lady from Maine. Where is it? It's called the natural toucher. All right? The natural touch. Yes, it's called the natural. It's called, here it is. Don't mess with me, Jay. Susan Collins defends Joe Biden. Okay? Come on, man. Come on. It's in the Washington Times. Come on, get with it. Now, you have never heard, I've never heard this term, and I've lived about 3 times as long as you have. Now, look at here. The natural toucher. This is what she says. Are you ready, son? Senator Susan Collins defended former Vice President Joseph R. the Freeloader Biden. I put that in there, I'm sorry. Saying in her years of serving with him, she never saw the kind of behavior 2 women have accused him of. And by the way, there's a couple of more since she said this. And then she says, I've known Joe Biden for so many years, and he is a very friendly, affectionate individual. He's an affectionate individual. And here comes the phrase, and I about fell out of the easy chair when I read this, Jay. He's a very friendly, affectionate individual who is a natural, hey, hold on, natural toucher. A natural toucher. Now, what is I pray tell, what is a natural toucher? Huh? What is a natural toucher? Is that a natural toucher you've got there? Huh? Yeah, play a video, man. Here we go. Jay's got something up his sleeve here. Yeah, okay.
Close to me from behind, lean in, smell my hair, and then plant a slow kiss on the top of my head. To have the Vice President of the United States do that to me so unexpectedly and just kind of out of nowhere, it was just shocking. It was shocking because you don't expect that kind of intimate behavior. You don't expect that kind of intimacy from someone so powerful and someone who you just have no relationship whatsoever to touch you and to feel you and to be so close to you in that way.
Come on, do it, man. Builds character. Come on. Hey, I got another one for you. I didn't know this. Now, Jay, you're kind of young to hear all this stuff. Do you know? I didn't know. How would we know? That according to John Nolte and the Secret Service agents, routinely, habitually, as a matter of lifestyle, Uncle Joe exposed himself to female Secret Service agents. How did he do it? How did he do it? He always swam in the nude. And he refused to give the Secret Service agents advance notice of his trips back home. And so they began to complain. It was the second worst assignment in the Secret Service after being assigned to protect Hillary Clinton. You know, the Secret Service hated Hillary Clinton. She was rude and nasty to them. And so if they had a choice between guarding Hillary Clinton and guarding Uncle Joe, they didn't have a choice. So none of the agents wanted to go on his detail. And the issue was, and this is a quote, Biden likes to swim nude both at his vice president's residence in D.C. You mean we got a pool for that dude? And also at his home in Wilmington, which he goes back to several times a week. And this offends female Secret Service agents, okay? This was told to Sean Hannity by an agent, okay, who told this guy Kessler, who told Hannity. Now, they sign up to take, this is a quote, they sign up to take a bullet for the president, but they didn't sign up to have to watch Biden swim naked. And and they grant there's nothing wrong with swimming naked, skinny dipping in the private, but you know, that's not the way, you know, they have to deal with that guy. I mean, I guess somebody could jump in there and drown him, and you know, oh my golly! Now
I'm sorry. I just all this right now.
Come on. It's making you grow up. Take it. It's like eating your spinach.
I better not. If I see that guy, I better not be packing.
Look here. It's the natural toucher, all right, and New Joe. And I'm not even halfway done, all right? Now, Pelosi has come up with something that, I never thought of this either. You know what she's invented, what she calls it? You ought to appreciate this. The straight arm club. Do you know what the straight arm club is? Jay, don't laugh. It's serious stuff. Do you know what the straight arm club is? Yeah. What is it? Huh?
It's when you can't have a 10-foot pole because he's a politician.
Here's the thing that she's advised Joe Biden to do. She says, join the straight arm club with me, Pelosi said. And she says, I'm a member of the straight arm club. She says, just pretend you have a cold. And then you don't let anybody get any closer to you than arm's length. So she's trying to advise, Goofy Pelosi is trying to advise Uncle Joe on joining the straight arm club, having the natural, it all goes together too well, having the natural toucher join the straight arm club. Huh? Now, meanwhile, there's another woman named Amy Lapos who's come out and said that Biden grabbed her head and rubbed noses with her during her 2009 fundraising event. But that's just a natural toucher. What? Huh? Huh? Yeah? Come on, Jay. So, what are your terms on the quiz? What is the straight arm club?
When I see him, that's the straight arm club.
Oh, is that it? And what is New Joe?
I'm not even. I can't even say it on the air.
Oh, no! Don't say stuff. I don't want you slipping over the edge on the air like this now. Cause come on. And then we have oh well, it's funny. You know, he's got a situation here where a lady complained. I'm going to try to find this one. That he put his hand on her thigh. Let me see if I can find that one. Now listen, that's getting down to the creep level, and that's getting down to the level of Lee knee block. One of the testimonies by one of the ladies was who never, most of us feel never got justice from one William P. Cervone, was that uninvited, unwanted, one Lee knee block, and it's in the allegations, I think, of the report, placed a hand on a thigh. And apparently, this is something, too, that Uncle Joe has done, but he didn't mean anything by it, you know. I guess what he was checking to see, Jay, is if, here it is, if the lady was doing her leg extensions, right? Huh? Huh? Woman accuses Joe Biden of inappropriate behavior at event. Are you ready for this? Condemning sexual assault. This is in the New York Times. Yes, this is in the New York Times. 2 more women have come forward, to accuse Uncle Joe of inappropriately touching them. There's a former college student and sexual assault survivor, Catalin Caruso, told the New York Times that Biden rested his hand on her thigh, hoof, I guess it could be also, at an event on sexual assault at the University of Nevada, and hugged her, quote unquote, just a little bit too long.
See, they like to do this.
Who does?
The left. Mm-hmm. They like to be hypocrites, and they like the double playing. They like to show the power that way.
Leftist molester. Did you come up with that? Oh, my golly. Now, this was at an event in 2016. Isn't this interesting? This is about the time that Sleazy Cummings wants to go back and get the dirt on Steamy Daniels. This is an event in 2016 at the University of Nevada in Las Vegas with none other than Lady Gaga. And she performed her Oscar-nominated song about sexual assault, Till It Happens to You. And at that time, Biden, laid his hand on the woman's thigh, you know? So, oh, man, there you are. I mean, there you are. Now, let me tell you what is a double standard about this. I want to find this for you because I want you to get this all in perspective because I'm trying to get it in this perspective. So I want to work it through with you and see if you get it in the same perspective. You remember Fairfax? I mean, this is a quiz question. Do you remember? Okay, who is Fairfax? Excellent. You get an A. He's a lieutenant governor of Virginia. You remember that he had an accuser? Yeah, there's the accuser. You know what she said just now that this stuff is broken about Uncle Joe, a member of the Straight Arm Club who was just a natural toucher? She said, I want some action from the Virginia legislature. I want the people of Virginia to know the truth, and I would like the Virginia legislature. Let me tell you something. Good luck. If these local cases are any indication that the young lady here in Alachua County and the young woman in Marco Island, if you talk to them, and if you read Stephanides' article from the Marco Island paper, you want to call that justice? I mean, it takes a lot of courage for these women to do what they do. Now some of them can be set up and used like Ballsy was against Kavanaugh. And so that's my point. If the leftists want to invent one of these women, you're on to it, Jay. If the leftists want to invent one of these women to cause trouble, they bring one out of the shadows. And if they want to commit to one, they treat the woman like this woman, because Fairfax is A, a man of color, and B, is he not, I think, a Democrat? Yeah. So this is all you see now, a vicious smear campaign of Fairfax, right? Just a vicious smear campaign. Now, he has admitted being intimate with women, but he's denied he's ever had any coercion or assault with them. So the state Democrat Party has briefly pressured Fairfax to step down. It's almost in distant memory. It's like the dust has settled and the storm's gone away. But he did not press the issue. And once Fairfax refused to step down, they never pressed it. But meanwhile, Sleazy Cummings is over there trying to dig up something 4 or 5 years old about Steamy Daniels that the news never felt was newsworthy and couldn't document and couldn't support. They've got a lot of gumption. I mean, they've got a lot of gumption. And people say, oh, you make this stuff up. No, I don't make it up. This is it. You draw your own conclusions. If you don't agree, well, you don't agree, and you can find another reality. Remember, there's all kinds of realities, and you make them up. I remember one time a friend of mine used to be in a band, and somebody would ask him, can you play such and such? And he would always say, well, it's your world. And what he meant was, if that's the song in your world you want, I'm in your world because I can play that song, so it's your world, yeah. And but what he meant by that is that, these songs that people say, oh, play this, play that, that tells you what their world is like. Imagine if you will, right? We've got that one somewhere back there, Jay. That's when the world's all going to float away and the borders are going to go away and racial identities are going to go away and the sexual identities are going to go away and the need to make money is going to go away. I guess even the need to eat is going to go away, and we'll just get in, just everything will just move on happily thereafter. So, but anyway, Fairfax, don't forget Fairfax. He figures into this, and he is, of course, I guess what he is the more I think about it, he's a natural toucher, is he not, Jay? He's not? He's not a natural toucher. Huh? He certainly doesn't belong to the straight arm club, right? I mean, there you are. I don't know. So, so we got all these things that seem to be. I don't know what our theme is today, but there's obviously, one set of rules for one set of people and another set of rules for another set of people, and meanwhile we've got Hillary Clinton getting away scot-free, and I'm going to cover that in a minute and let you know how that went down. So it's an ever-going saga, and I don't think they're going to quit. I don't think the left can quit. They have nothing else. That even Whoopi Goldberg, she's defended Uncle Joe, oh my golly, and that whole crew is a nutcase. That bunch on that show. So there you are. You draw your own conclusions. Now, meanwhile, this is really cool. I like this. This guy is a Trump hater. It's Gerald Saib, and he writes for the Wall Street Journal, and he's had to say this, and it's killing him to say it. And I thought I'd just put it out there so you don't get depressed or anything. There's Gators Dockside, great place. Check them out. He had to say this, all right, because it's the truth. no matter what kind of thing Sleazy Cummings does and all these other guys who are attacking Trumpster every which way but loose, guess what never changes? That's his base. People like us. We never, ever leave him. And unfortunately for Geeb, Gerald F. Seib, he's had to admit this, okay? He says that this may be the most important factor affecting the 2020 presidential election season. The Trumpster has been beat on and kicked and accused every which way but loose, and his base, as he writes, I'll quote him, his base of support appears rock solid. His job approval rating is, and he says 43%, I've seen it higher than that, and it's almost identical to the 44% rating Americans gave him 1 month after he took office. So 2 years later, having been beat up and run hard and put away a wet, we haven't left the Trumpster. And this is before the election even comes around. We're not even cranking it up yet. I mean, we're just lying around here and wait. And we've already got 43% of the people rock solid behind it. The base has never changed. Now, Seib has been forced to have to say that by historical standards, this is unusually high, an unusual situation. He says a look back at poll numbers for the last 13 presidents shows that there has been less variation in public opinion about Trump than for any of his predecessors. Less change in public opinion about Trump than any of his predecessors. There was a 62-point swing in the approval ratings for George W. Bush during his two-term presidency, and a 65-point swing for Harry Truman. And other presidents' job approval ratings over time tended to swing by 30 or 40 percentage points. The previous president, whose job approval and constancy was most comparable to Mr. Trump, was Obama, but his ratings moved to within a 15-point range, and he could dip and swerve a lot more than the Trumpster does. So even in these intense, and this is the phrase that Seib uses, these intense polarizations of the times, the views of the Trumpster have not changed. Particularly the self-identified Republicans give him an 86% approval. And we know he doesn't have the total approval of the Democrats. There's some Republicans, there's some rhinos in there. So Seib has been forced to write, and I'd say forced to write because I've been watching the guy for quite a while, and he's not a Trumpster. He's been hoping that Trumpster will be tripped up. But he has to write that this picture of this analysis of Trump has not been altered by events, including the news surrounding the investigations into the investigations of him and the ones around him. Only time it dipped a little was when he canned the ghoul, James Comey, which he should have done a long time ago. And it dipped not at all when Manafort was found guilty. His job approval rating, Trump stayed right at 44%. Even after Cohen was indicted, Seib writes, so if I use you out there taking notes and worrying about this is what it's at. Cohen, even after Cohen was indicted, it stayed at 44% approval again. And even after Cohen pled guilty, it only dipped to 43%. And so the events that are going on inside the beltway of D.C., where they think they're the be-all and the end-all and they run the world, don't have any effect on those of us down here who walk on our knuckles, okay? And the deplorables who can barely chew gum and talk, you know. We're rock solid behind the Trumpster because we ain't going to be fooled by Sleazy Cummings. We're not going to be fooled by Uncle Joe, the natural toucher. We're not. That's you know, and Steamy Daniels and all that. It's not going to and Bug Eyes and you know that whole crowd, Fat Jerry. It's not going to have any effect on us. And we're going to take that right into the 2020 campaign, and unless the Democrats can come up with somebody who is far superior, and it would have to be somebody who would absolutely divest itself from the progressive left of the Democrat Party, and the progressive left of the Democrat Party will never, trust me, ever allow that to happen. They certainly won't allow it to happen here in Alachua County. They will not allow it to happen. So that's the way the handwriting's on the wall. The Trumpster is rock solid in spite of all the things that are being slung at him and those around him. And I predict it's going to stay rock solid and get stronger because there's nothing that Sleazy Cummings and that crowd have that is of any substantial meaning. Enjoyed speaking with you today. Certainly enjoy our sponsors and patronize our sponsors who work closely with the Ward Scott Files to help you get this word over to you for you to think about. I want to thank Big Daddy Productions for producing this and Jay for working with me behind the wall there. Have a great day. Warthog Command Center out.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
Do you want to put your business in front of 10,000 new customers? Visit wardscottfiles.tv today for more information on our advertising opportunities.